name is Liza Goodroe. I'm in the Purple Tribe here at Wellspring Students, and I am a senior this year at the Academy for Art, Science, and Technology. That's actually kind of weird to say I'm a senior, but I'm excited. So if you guys know me, or if you've been to student camp with me, you know that I am super competitive. Like, not just like, oh, I like to win, I like to play games. I hate losing. It drives me crazy. I kind of have anger issues just a bit. I hate to lose. So I do competitive dance, and we do these things called intensive. So it's basically like summer camps, and they bring in guest instructors and choreographers, and they come in and they teach classes. So we all take the classes and learn the dances, and there's this thing where at the end of class, if you've done well, if you've learned the dance and performed it well, they pick a special group of people to go in the last group, and that's kind of the special group, kudos to you, you did it well. And me being really competitive, I see that last group as winning. I see that as the accomplishment of the class is being picked in the last group. So I have this friend, and she's actually one of my best friends. She is so talented. She's absolutely amazing. She's so good at learning the dances. She can do any style, whether it's ballet, hip hop, contemporary, whatever it is, she's amazing. And so she gets picked in those groups all the time. And I'm so happy for her, obviously, and she definitely deserves to get picked. But in these summer camps, the more and more she got picked, and sometimes I wouldn't, I began to get really frustrated, and she just kept getting picked, and they were like, you're so good, and she was, and I was so happy for her, but I began to get a little jealous, and without even realizing it, I was kind of getting frustrated with her because she was getting picked and I wasn't, which that doesn't really make sense at all because she didn't do anything to me, and if anything, I should have been happy for her, but I was actually kind of getting mad at her in a way. So I realized that that was just my own jealousy, and I kind of had to change my mindset. But I tell that story with the point that jealousy is a really dangerous thing that can be hard to control. It may start as just a little bit of frustration and you're kind of wish you had what someone else did, but eventually it can seep deep down to where you're really mad at that person and you're just really frustrated with them. You may be jealous of someone for something small, like they are so good looking and they're just so pretty. Or maybe they get really good grades. Or sometimes I get jealous when someone always gets picked first for kickball and I always get picked last. But maybe you're jealous of someone for something a lot deeper, like how their parents always show up for all the parent meetings and all their soccer games. Or the fact that they're just so confident in themselves and they can always speak up in class. Sometimes I know I struggle with jealousy, and I'm jealous when it's so easy for someone to make friends and just everyone likes them. Whether it's a small thing or something that runs much deeper, jealousy can change the way you see others and the way you see yourself. When you see someone else with something that you really want, this creates feelings of insecurity and disappointment. And you may not even realize it, but you probably begin to target these feelings at that person. You begin to get angry and frustrated with them when they've done nothing wrong to you, and that's just because of the jealousy you have. When you're really jealous of a person, it's impossible to love that person and love ourselves the way God calls us to. There truly is no easy fix, and there's no way to just not become jealous because people are always going to have things that we want, or it's going to seem like they have life better than we do. We can't really wave a magic wand and magically fix this issue of jealousy. So what are we supposed to do? Well, it turns out jealousy isn't something we deal with now. It's actually been around for a super long time, and we can read stories in the Bible of people who have dealt with the exact same thing. Today we're going to be looking at a story that I'm sure you've heard a million times about David and Goliath, and David defeats Goliath. But I want to focus on a different part today about the character King Saul, and King Saul, how he experiences this story of David and Goliath. So the story begins. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soka in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes-dammim between Soka and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. So That's a bunch of fancy words that are really hard to pronounce and I probably pronounced wrong. But basically what it's explaining is this is the perfect setup for a good old-fashioned showdown, like a good battle. And something we haven't learned yet is the Philistines had a secret weapon. So it goes on. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. So I have no idea how tall 6 cubits and a span is. I've heard that it's about 9 foot in our measuring thing nowadays, but I also don't know how many pounds 5,000 shekels is, but I'm assuming that's pretty heavy. And basically what this is saying is this is a huge giant. And not only was he this really big guy, but he was a champion. He destroyed people and crushed them in battle. And he was so big that he always won his battles. So this was a really big deal, and this was a big dude, and everyone was wondering who's gonna fight him. And no one really wanted to because they were basically guaranteed to get crushed. But then this little servant named David steps up. And it says, David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." So basically Saul is saying, David, you're crazy. You're this little servant. There's no way you could beat this giant who's been fighting since he was little. But eventually David convinced Saul because no one else wanted to fight him, and David was the only one stepping up. So he eventually goes into battle against Goliath, and this is what it says. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. So that's like a big moment. This little servant, defeats the giant, and everyone is celebrating, and everyone is telling David, like, you're a hero, you saved us, you won this battle for us. And as you can imagine, everyone was so proud of David and so happy for him, and King Saul actually promoted him because of this great courage he had shown. So he promoted him to go into more battles and more situations like this, and David did really well. So the Bible says that whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers well. He was such a successful guy. Whatever battle he went into, he was victorious. Everything he touched seemed to turn to gold. So everyone loved David because he was so successful and he did so much good for their nation. So the Bible says, as they danced, they sang, "Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands." The people literally danced and celebrated, and they began to elevate David above Saul because they were so proud of all of his accomplishments. And as I'm sure you can guess, Saul wasn't too thrilled with the fact that everyone began to love David more than him. In the Bible, it actually says, Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. So as the people continued to praise David for all his heroic efforts, Saul just got really frustrated and he began to get really jealous. And the thing was, it wasn't like the people had turned on Saul and only liked David now. They liked both of them. Saul was just jealous at the fact that they praised David and began to elevate him even higher. This jealousy set in for Paul, and the Bible says, when Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. So Saul could have been happy for David and he could have celebrated him because David saved the Israelites in the battle against Goliath, and he probably saved Saul's life because if David wouldn't have stepped up, then Saul would have had to go and fight Goliath. And I think that's just a big thing because Saul was so focused on the fact that he wanted what David had, he didn't even realize the way he should have been celebrating David. There's a verse in Proverbs that I think really sums up this story of Saul, and it does a great job of explaining all of the destruction that jealousy can have. And in the Proverbs 14:30, it says, "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." So in this verse, that word envy basically means the same thing as jealousy, when you just want something so bad, but someone else has it, and it begins to control you and destroy you. And it's really pretty easy to find yourself in this exact same situation as Paul, because jealousy can take over us and can begin to control us when we don't even realize it. Jealousy has the potential to ruin friendships, to steal our joy, and to destroy our self-confidence. There really is no easy way to avoid jealousy, because we're always going to come across people that seem to have a better life than us or have something we really wish we had. So how are we supposed to deal with this jealousy and handle these situations the way God would want? If you've been wondering that as I've been talking, or maybe you've been wondering that your whole life, I actually have some really good news for you. There's a solution to jealousy that's scientifically and experimentally proven to lessen the effects of jealousy. And it really seems too simple, but the best way that we can combat jealousy is to celebrate others and ourselves. The reason this works is because when we turn our attention from all the things we don't have to all the things we're blessed with, we begin to feel so much more content and our jealousy lessens. And when we start to celebrate others for their accomplishments instead of just being jealous of them, we actually turn our jealousy into joy, and we can be excited with them and not against them. The bottom line is, the more I celebrate others, the more I like myself. So there really are two easy steps to do this. The first step is to celebrate yourself. Look at all of the accomplishments that you've achieved and be proud of yourself and be excited for yourself. And on top of that, look at all of the blessings that you've been granted with and be thankful for that, and really just thank God for all of the things that you're blessed to have. After you celebrate yourself, you can begin to celebrate others around you, and that's the second step. Really ask God to change your heart. Instead of having jealousy for others, begin to feel happy for them and to celebrate them, because that's the best thing that's going to help you not be jealous, is when you can be proud of your friends and proud of others, even when they get something you really wanted. As I wrap up, I want to tell one more story that I just think is a really good depiction of this idea of celebrating others to also celebrate ourselves. So like I said, I do competitive dance, and one of my favorite memories is at a competition probably about 5 years ago. It was our first time competing our solos, which is when you do a dance all by yourself. And we all competed our solos, and then we were sitting at awards together. And I remember my best friend, it's actually the same person I was talking about in the beginning of this, she got awarded with the highest overall solo award. And if you don't do dance, you probably don't really know what that means, but that basically means she had the best solo, the highest score of anyone else in the competition. So it was a really, really big deal. And I just remember we were so excited, and I was so proud of her, and we celebrated so much. And looking back, I kind of wonder why I wasn't jealous of her, because I had a solo too, and I just didn't do as well as her. But in that moment, I was so focused on celebrating her and just being proud of her that I didn't want to feel jealous. I just was happy and joyful that she did so well. It definitely is hard sometimes to not be jealous, because people get the things we want, but we can control our jealousy and turn it into joy by celebrating others and ourselves. Thank you.